with the projection of my voice. Let me I can use this. So as you heard, my name is Nyaundi, UON alumni, class of 90. For those of you who have been wondering how long the University of Nairobi has been in existence, it existed back then. I graduated from Parklands, was admitted to the bar in London, and in 2019 was blessed with a grandchild. I fellowship at Lavington SDA, that's where my membership is, and probably on account that I now have a grandchild, I have the pleasure of serving within the children's ministries. So part of my worship is made up by singing songs like Father Abraham, making melodies. God told Noah to build an ark. So those are the things that give me joy in recent years. So although you did not invite me here to sing you children choruses, I will negotiate with you to humor me by having one. Who can recommend one children's chorus that you can sing?
God said no.
God said no. Okay. God told Noah to build an ark, to build an ark, to build an ark. God told Noah to build an ark, and Noah built an ark. Come, and ziggy, ziggy, ziggy. Come, and ziggy, ziggy, ziggy. Come, and ziggy, ziggy, ziggy. And Noah built an ark. The animals went in 2 by 2, 2 by 2, 2 by 2. The animals went in 2 by 2, and Noah built an ark. How? Come, and ziggy, ziggy, ziggy. Come, and ziggy, ziggy, ziggy. Come, and ziggy, ziggy, ziggy. And Noah built an ark. The rain came down. Shh. The rain came down. Shh. The rain came down. Shh. And Noah built an ark. How? Come, and ziggy, ziggy, ziggy. Come, and ziggy, ziggy, ziggy. Come, and ziggy, ziggy, ziggy. And Noah built an ark. The people cried. The people cried. The people cried. And Noah built an ark. Come, and ziggy, ziggy, ziggy. Come, and ziggy, ziggy, ziggy. Come, and ziggy, ziggy, ziggy. And Noah built an ark. Is life not fun? Okay, let's go into the subject that we want to discuss, which is around church ethics and dispute resolution. So I'd like to pose a question. When you hear the word ethics, what comes to mind? Morality? Any other word that comes to mind? Socially acceptable norms. Thanks. So I think that's where we can, I'll use that as my entry, because that's it precisely. When you talk about ethics, you're referring to conduct that is accepted in society and by culture, isn't it? And that is why whenever we are seated together, we will be saying ourselves, what's the right food to drink? What's the right food to eat? What are the right words to use? What are the parameters for acceptable speech? Can you use swear words? Can you use expletives? What can you drink? These are questions that will keep popping up because of contexts we live in. I have just been having a conversation with a friend of mine who lives in South Africa. And she was saying there it is absolutely normal for your child to be as scantily dressed as possible, especially during summer. And so, because she's of Asian, pictures of her child back to her relatives in India, they are horrified. They're asking her, why is your child walking naked? And she's saying, but inside, when we sit together as leaders, having come from the different places we have come from, this in itself will be a subject of continuous discussion unless we set the frame right, the frame within which we want to have our conversation on ethics. That's why I think congratulations to those who designed the program, who said there is ethics and then there is church ethics. There is ethics that we can discuss in Kenya. Is it okay for our leaders to, what were they doing yesterday at Matungu and whatever, and London Ward? Is it acceptable for political leaders to behave that way? If you, as an elder or a church officer of UNCK, yesterday you were at Matungu, would we hold you by the same standard? I think that's the question we want. Ethical standards as those that are pronounced out there, those that are accepted. I want to suggest that maybe not. Maybe not. And we want to be clear in our minds that societal ethics, there is what Kenya says is acceptable for a lady to dress in, and then there is what the Church of God says. This is the standard for women in God's church. And the moment we are able to distinguish that and say, it is okay, I am Kenyan, I am Luya, I am Kisi, I am Luo, I am Kikuyu, I am Kalenjin, I am Nandi, I am whatever I am. But then I subject myself to God's ethical standards. So what we want to discuss today is then, what is that God's ethical standard? Because I think my brothers and sisters do not subject ourselves to God's ethical standards, then these questions will always trouble us. I'm sure you have been in the typical Sabbath afternoon discussions where we go at each other. How should we dress? Is it okay to put Q-tex? Is it okay to draw your eyebrow? Is it okay to wear a skirt that ends before it begins? You have in the afternoon. Is it okay to visit my girlfriend and they're alone in the room? Is it acceptable? Is it acceptable if we are courting for us to kiss? Should we be holding hands? You know, these are conversations we have because we are within a context where it is okay, it's acceptable to live together, come we stay, kind of a training as you prepare for marriage, isn't it? It's generally, in fact, the people in your village will encourage you to bring a young lady into your saiga once you have committed. Saiga is also known as Simba, is also known as what? In all, it is that room or house that you live in as a young man, just as you're about to grow into full manhood. So in many cultures, it is acceptable to engage even in premarital sex, isn't it? However, the conversation we're having today is that we do not want to get into a debate about what does Kenya find acceptable? What are the acceptable moral standards for Kenyans? That's not the conversation I want to have. The conversation I want to have and to persuade you is that as leaders in God's church, you want to have as your standard God's pronouncements on what is ethical and what is not. What is acceptable to God and what is not acceptable to God. That's what you want to be your North Pole. Now, oftentimes we are told that the law of God is summarized in Luke chapter 10, verse 27. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. That's one pronouncement. The second one, Micah chapter 6 and verse 8. He has shown you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? But to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Micah chapter 6 and verse 8. So we find here a summary that says God requires that you are completely in love with Him. Those of you who have ventured into this space of saying, and they glow up with a smile. Okay? Am I the only one who loved Mr. Nyaondi like that? Has it changed from the time I fell in love? This was my feeling of love, that it meant everything to me. I would be seated in a box, and when he shows up, knocks on the door, and says, let's go to Uhuru Park, my day is made. It's over. I'm done. And if, by the way, he still has some boom, we have something called boom, student allowance, and he takes me to Wimpy, and I get a burger and fries, while he says he has a problem with his tummy, he will just drink water. You know? I'll be happy. I'll be happy. I am seated there with the center of my universe. God says, love me with all your heart. Be consumed by me. Let thoughts of me and what I require of me be the knowledgeable. You know this thing. You've gone through the church manual. You even have the elder's handbook. You understand them from cover to cover, but you sit here with ignorance. Because when you sit with other of God's children, what you will discover is that there are stages of growth and different stages. But my own experience, that the journey to leadership, you suffer wounds. So many times when you walk into a position of leadership, so people are seated here with their wounds. And that is why you require a spirit of meekness to be attentive. Is my brother, my sister, talking to me based on what we are discussing here, or is it because of an injury they suffered outside of this body? You have to have righteousness. I think we all have that message, including of the spirit of prophecy. You sit there and you are, as the Bible says, working out your salvation with fear and trembling. And therefore, you are of a mild disposition. You are not stuffing your Christianity and your righteousness down people's throats. But you are able, because I am, as leaders, but you will be able to say, I am now of pure heart. You remember that prayer, David, in Psalms 51? Create in me a clean heart, O Lord. someone has said God's calling to us as leaders is we are called to perfection. Let's not just play, there's no gray here, it's black and white. As leaders, we are called to perfection. We must, in the secular world, they say you should be like Caesar's wife, above reproach. In Matthew 5, we are told, be perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. Purity of heart, here where your thoughts are generated, here where you make decisions, in your heart, it must be pure. Be very deliberate about it. I'm always trying new things. So this week, what I'm working on, someone introduced me to it, is to just sit in perfect silence for 5 minutes. Perfect silence. I put on the timer on my watch and I sit in perfect silence. I don't pick a book, I don't plan my day, I don't do it. I just sit quietly. I've only done it for 2 days. But what amazes me is how it is such a beautiful space. On both days, the thought that has come to my mind is, I am yours, Lord. Everything I am yours, Lord. And what I have found is that it just clarifies for me my day. When now I get out of my bed and my feet hit my ground, I've already had that conversation with God that I am yours. 5 minutes, I'm not reading a book, I'm not listening to music, just quiet to see what is this thought that is in my mind. Back to the Beatitudes. We've got to be peacemakers. I will go back to our Kenyan society. Who are the people who get headlines? If headlines is something to celebrate, how do you make your way to the headline of the Nation, of the Standard, of the Star, and what is the other newspaper, the Citizen? By being as controversial as you can be, isn't it? Being abrasive. Look at the Babu winners. Look at what's that guy in Migori? Whoever that is, the guy in ODM now. Huh? Not Obado, there's the MP is Somali, Junet. Look at Duale in his heyday. Look at Murkomen. How do you get to be on the headline? By being aggressive, by giving punchlines that show that you can also floor people. But for us, because you see, sometimes when we are seated in these boardrooms and there's an issue that's being discussed, and you all don't hold a common view on it, sometimes the hero is the one who is able to stand up and tell the first elder and the pastor to their face, that can never happen. And I'm saying it will not happen. We would rather start a different fellowship. But for as long as I am in this, I'm sure you've heard of boardrooms that are conducted that way. But in the Beatitudes, God says, blessed are the peacemakers. Because there will always be controversy. There will always be differences. You will not always agree. You will have different opinions. When should we have a meeting? Where should we have it? Should we or should we not serve lunch? Should so and so ever come to speak to us? These are things that look straightforward. But when you come into this space of leadership without the correct ethical values, they become points of contention. Should we put seats in the middle? Somebody can lose their temper over that. Can you imagine whether or not we should have seats here and somebody loses their temper? I hope I am emphasizing to you that in order to serve in this place, you've got to put on Christ's robes of righteousness. You've got to humble yourself. You've got, there are certain organizations, I will share this with the leader, but for instance, the General Conference, and this is something you might want to consider, the General Conference has come up with an ethical code for its employees. And once you join the General Conference as a staff, you sign on to this. But listen, some of the things that they have committed to themselves, they have committed themselves to by virtue of the fact that they subscribe to God's ethical standards. So they say, what are their values? We value the Bible as the primary reference for life's direction and qualities, not what somebody else said. We value excellence in all that we do. We value ethical and moral conduct. I will share this and you will see it. So they say, what are their ethical responsibilities? They will live a life that is consistent with the church message and mission. They will respect church-owned assets. They will respect colleagues. They will ensure there is efficiency and attention to the job. There is personal integrity in financial matters. They will avoid inappropriate influence, and they will maintain an ethical environment in the workplace. I hope that has shed some light in terms of what we, as the leadership of UON, can do as we seek to lead God's church with God's ethical values. I'll move on to dispute resolution. And the point to note is that conflict is inevitable. Someone has said, unless you are lying cold on a slab in the mortuary, the body next to you, that's when there can never be conflict, because you're lying cold on a slab in the mortuary. But as long as you're living, there's blood flowing through your veins, conflict is inevitable. And someone has said, when we serve in positions of leadership, it comes with the territory. So, embrace it. Conflict is not necessarily bad, because it also allows for different views, different opportunities, different perspectives to be brought on board. We must always remember that even though God's church, in terms of God's vision for his church, is perfect, it cannot be perfect because it has imperfect people. So just 3 quick points on how you want to deal with dispute resolution. Number 1, deal with it immediately. The moment you spot a problem, deal with it immediately. Don't delay. You know, sometimes what happens is because of this, what we call Christian courtesy to each other, you're thinking, I don't want this sister to feel uncomfortable. I don't want this brother to feel uncomfortable. Yet, it's causing an issue. You know, it's like a skunk. There's a smell in the room because of this issue. What we are advised is deal with it immediately, and we can actually take Jesus' example on this. Observe Jesus. Every time the Pharisees raised a controversial issue, Jesus will not say, let me set up a committee, we will come back and deal with this. He would deal with them immediately. Throw them a parable and resolve the issue. They would walk away from there, very clear in their minds what Jesus' position on this is. Now, why it's important is that if you leave something for a week, I don't know whether this has been your experience, that when you, after a week, the facts change a bit, and you can't really be very adamant and say, no, this is the way it happened. Facts change with time, isn't it? And we start saying, was he seated on there or on this side? Did she say that? So it's good if in a meeting, for instance, one time, very interestingly, in our church, at our church board, we had a very interesting conversation, and it was whether or not church should reopen. I live on the side of caution, so I had said, let's delay until the government gives a clear way forward. Somebody else was saying, ye of little faith, what message are we sending if we don't think that God can save us from this virus? So we were in a church board. So first of all, the elder had just announced and said, we are having a physical church board. And now those of us who feel, oh, we are very close to the vulnerable age group, we're like, but elder, are there adequate arrangements? Why are we coming? This was around in, I think, March. So we were a bit anxious. And the elder said, no, you come with the social distancing, everything. So we went to the apprehension. And while we were seated there, another member of the church board stood up and said, we've got to put a stop to the YouTube church goers. People should come and worship in God's sanctuary. I'm telling you, I felt every vein. If the shoe hurts or something, if the shoe fits, you wear it. I just felt, that was targeted. That's not a general meant. And something within me, then I understood what it means to be, a soldier who jumps up, pow! But I found myself rising in anger. Then something spoke me and said, so this is your opinion. You are the one who is fearful of COVID. You are seated in the same room with other people who understand it maybe more than you. So the spirit that I rose with is not the spirit that I stood with. Within that short interlude of rising and standing, I want to believe God spoke to me. And I was able then to speak to him and say, I am sorry. But we must accommodate those of little faith, of whom I represent. So, what is the compromise? What is the compromise? Because there are those of us who genuinely are fearful. And then there are those of you bold like a lion. The reason I'm giving that example is that brother, because time, frustration will distort facts. It's like a wound. Unless you attend to it immediately, it keeps on festering, isn't it? Something that began as a scratch, kidogo, you have to go to surgery now for it to be cleaned properly. And then, of course, if you don't deal with it immediately, you lose the opportunity to make immediate corrections. So you will continue in this unhappy state until you get the courage to deal with the issues. So do you want to continue in this uncomfortable stage, this space that's making you uneasy? Or do you want to be able to say, This is a problem. Let's deal with it together. The second issue is deal with the person who has offended you directly. I think one of the things that fuels disputes is when I have disagreed with you, instead of me saying to you directly, and if we go back to the thing of values, I think one of the things, and maybe it's the advantage of age, I now am able to appreciate, is that sometimes things are not as they seem. So, I'll tell you a good example. I'm married in Kisi, but I am not Kisi by birth. I'm Kisi by love, okay? Which might even be stronger. So, one of the words I heard very early in Kisi was Omokungu. It sounded like an insult to me. So, one time I heard somebody say, Omokungu or Kennedy. I really felt bad. I said, so I went to my husband and asked him, why does so-and-so always call me Omokungu? Why can't he say Omomina or something? Omomina sounds gentle, like nice. They said, but it just means you're the woman, you're the one who is kungari. Things are brought and you kunga them. She says, so what that taught me is that across cultures, you're here in different cultures. One of the things that used to offend me when I started sitting in boardrooms was we could be seated, and then always it was a man who would say, I think we should have some tea. And what that meant is that the ladies should immediately stand, go and bring the tea, and serve it, including washing people's hands. It used to kill me. It used to kill me. Until I said to myself, why not raise it? Why not raise it that this thing bothers me? This thing really bothers me. Why should somebody why not even say, Patricia, I'd like a cup of tea? Why not? Why does someone just say, I think we should have some tea? And that's my cue. It really irritated me. So the day I raised it and I said, I would rather, even if you feel I'm the one who should get the tea, just call me by my name and say, Patricia, can we have some tea? I find that better. But you see now, because you don't talk about it, you're just walking around with all your organs swollen, isn't it? But speak about it, go to the person, because what I have understood is we are so different. And what I'm taking as an offense, you might not intend it as an offense, or it might be the way that you behave based on your socialization. And now you've met me from a different socialization. I don't understand. We work in organizations I work in an organization that's global. So for my colleagues who are based in London, they are comfortable saying, instead of calling me by name, they'll say our Africa office. So I said, but what is Africa office? Why don't you just say Patricia in Nairobi? It's not like Zoom will charge you more, for saying Patricia in Nairobi. So these are some of, but yet, unless you talk to the person directly, they cannot get it. It's not obvious. I think the problem is that when you assume that what's an offense to you, the other person also gets it. And that's why in the Bible we are told, Matthew 18:15, if someone offends you, find the time, go sit with them and say, when we were seated at the church board, and you say, all all men are cheats. I felt wounded by that statement. And the person will say, oh, sorry, I didn't mean it like that. Okay. In the boardroom, I will say, we need increased transparency around our finances. The person is able to say, I just meant, as you are presenting the report, can you also talk about the collections? Because you will find, we've said that the church board is from 8 to 10, so we are time constrained. People talk in short sentences, but those short sentences are loaded. So, and then English is not our first language. We are not holding this meeting in our first language. So, the very language we are using can be a barrier to communication. So, again, going back to our values and meekness and graciousness, always giving the other person a benefit of doubt that the harm was not intended. So going to them directly and say, brother, I felt like when you say this, so being very specific, when you approach someone who you feel has wronged you, don't just go there and say, you know, there are statements you make that are not right, and I'm not happy about this. And then you feel you've reported to them. That's not helpful. I think it's helpful to say, Patricia, when you stood in front of us and you kept pointing at me, I felt that you wanted other people in the room, or communicating something to other people in the room, that message was targeted at me. Then I will know the reason of your discomfort. And if it's an apology that's forthcoming, I'll be able to do it. And we know, of course, how the Bible counsels us on how to escalate. In the event that when I raise it with you, you play hardball with me, the Bible says, I now come with a sister, Matthew 18:16, and say, I've tried, this is our issue, it's not getting resolved. Can you please? If that fails, of course, then it becomes a disciplinary issue. Especially us in Africa, the thing that will kill Africans is politeness. But we are told when you are dealing with conflict resolution, deal with the intention of resolving the issue completely. Okay? So don't say, at least we told him, and then it ends there. What they say, if we are dealing with this as Christians, we've got to table what is the issue. So if the issue is that I am the church clerk, and I'm always coming late, that means church board either is delayed or the first 20 minutes proceedings are ongoing in the absence of the church clerk. So the issue that we want to deal with is your commitment to keeping time as a church clerk. That's the issue that we table. We can't start tabling the issue that you go to toilet and other things, okay? It may be the reason for your delay, but the issue that we want to deal with is church board begins at 9. You are the church clerk. We need you there at 8:55 so that as the meeting begins, you are there to ensure that the previous meetings, notes, and these meetings notes are correctly captured. So once you've understood the issue, we then arrive at a common solution. We say, okay, henceforth, church board will be held every second Sunday of the month at 10 a.m. Put it in your calendar. So we've reminded you because It could be that you are forgetting. Then the second thing is that what other help do you need so that you're here at 8:55 so that we start at 9? So once we arrive at the solution, sometimes people will laugh and say, hiyo ni utoto, kufuatilia watu sana. But I have found that when you take time, especially with disputes, to look at what is the issue, dissect it properly, and then the solution. And that meeting where you are arriving at a solution, everyone must come back and speak and say, we came here, this was the issue, we've agreed like this, and my role is X, Y, Z. And if it's about promptness at meetings, I commit to the next meeting, I will come at 9, so that it's very clear, and you can transfer this to any other conflict. Of course, for those who are very difficult, sometimes you have to reduce these agreements into writing and say, now let's take notes. What is the issue? What are our options? What's the solution we've agreed upon? And this is your role. And that's how things get to move forward. So I think that is what was reminding me that my time is up. Thank you very much for your attention. I think we have 5 minutes for questions. Yeah. Sorry, I'm in a profession where we are paid to talk. So, although no one gave me any hope that this was a place where the admin is a default setting. So, any questions? Reactions, reflections.
The question is, what if you get to a point where the person you are working with has differences that maybe cannot be easily reconciled? For example, maybe one of your possibilities is getting in the way of the work. What do you do then? Then maybe does one of you resign, or how do you avoid that?
Okay. It's a complex question, but to give a general response, I have found the answer almost to everything is humility. And then I have also found there is nothing that cannot be resolved. Usually the question is, are you prepared to do what it takes to resolve this question? So, for instance, I got caught up in a very interesting issue of, no, that's too confidential, so I shouldn't say that. Let me look for a better example that can survive time. But I think I'm confident. First of all, I have always, my own principle is that I would never resign. Unless, like in the context of God's work, unless I have transgressed God's principles, I would never resign. I'm a firm believer that I don't yield my space. So if you are the one who is the aggressor, my principle in life is I will not yield my space to you. I will not resign because of an aggressor. So I think that the biblical principle is true when it says, first approach this person. I've always found that people, especially people who are just difficult and unreasonable, it's also because they're fighting their own wars. They also have their own crises. And this is the big reason. So with that knowledge now, I have come to a place in my life where I give people lots of benefit of doubt. But even if you're being difficult to me, it might not be me. I first rule that out, that you don't have your ghosts and wounds that are the reason for your behavior. If I confirm that you have no ghosts and wounds, and you're just coming at me that way to mess me up, then that's when I engage my no retreat, no surrender mode. I'm not the one living. Yeah.
You said they are going to give us 3 points. So, yeah, the one for dealing with it immediately, first dealing with the person directly. You are so eager then the time.
And dealing with the issue completely.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you. Okay, one last one.
And I think it has been 1 point after you have gone to them and you have agreed that this is how to go about, these are the things that will change, but they are not willing to change those things, and they are not willing to meet and change those things.
They're not?
They are not willing to maybe change those things, but they are not willing to even meet and reconcile and change those
Paul gives us counsel, isn't it? Is it in Romans 12, where it says, you help me to live at peace? Yeah, so, I mean, the point, my sister, is that not everyone will walk at peace with you. It may be that if, as you say, indeed, the person is not yielding, then you can't lose. But now the question is that within, so we can have this conversation like, if it's out there, how do you deal with it? Within the church board, how do you deal with it? Okay, within the church board, how do you deal with it? Because then you will find out, you will ask yourself, what is this issue we are disagreeing about? Isn't it? What is it possibly you can disagree with somebody at church board until you're saying, I'm leaving the church, or I can't sit with this person in the church? So that's the question. That's why I say, out there, the rules are different. Like at the workplace, it can actually get to a place where you say, this is toxic, I've got to leave. I can get alternative employment. But you've been nominated to serve for a year. What is this issue that you look at somebody in the boardroom and you say, I cannot serve on this judgment? And so I feel that especially in church board, you can go to the values we spoke to about earlier and the dispute resolution. If that does not resolve it, then we are looking at a church discipline issue, isn't it? Yeah. I was looking at you because you seemed to be my host. Okay, I'll ask that we rise for a word of prayer as we Our Father in heaven, we thank you for your mercies that are new every morning. As this day, we continue with it as the leaders of the University of Nairobi meet here. We continue to pray for them, Lord, that your blessing will be upon them, even as it was upon Solomon. I pray, Lord, that you give them wisdom. I pray, Lord, that you give them courage, even as you gave to David and Deborah. I pray, Lord, that in all their ways, Lord, they will be pleasing before you. I pray, Lord, that your blessing be upon them even as they are students, that they will excel in their studies. I pray for the families that they represent here. The Lord, as these young people are doing your work, may you please, Lord, watch over their families and bless them. We thank you, Lord, for this session that we have had. We pray, Lord, that we will be like Joseph, we will be like David, we will be like Daniel, young people on whom you can rely. We will be like Esther, leading nations. Thank you, Lord, for the privilege of serving in your church. I pray, Lord, that as these young people serve, may you also bless them in their lives. Thank you. We have prayed, believing, and trusting in Jesus' name. Amen.
Praise God. Praise God again. I'd like to thank you so much, Senior Counsel, for speaking to us. May the Lord bless you so much. So at this time, we like to have a transition to welcome our brother, Ken Miruka. Ken Miruka is a sales associate of our ministry, and he owns the main campus. He has some wealth of experience in the world of finances and business. So I'd just like to invite him up front. So he will be leading us in a discourse of leadership and finances. I know that really on a personal space, and also when it comes to now, the that officer, tips on savings and grants, how to be a good steward, things, time, talent, and in the eyes of money. And we find this session to be fruitful. As he discussed it and speaks to us, we'll be keen and attentive to pick some nuggets of truth that will enhance your service as a leader. So, Brother Miruka, you can be coming up. Tell us a little bit about yourself, then we'll continue. So, now we will pray, and then allow you to let us pray. Dear Lord, thank you so much for letting us in the first session successfully. Now, as we continue to be spoken to by our brother as regards matters pertaining finances and leadership, may you speak through him. May you make him a vessel that, Lord, this discourse will be profitable unto us, that we may find therein nuggets of wisdom that we find associated to. That as we serve this year, this place will be a place where we shall be enhanced as leaders, that our service will be one. These are in Jesus' name. Amen. Karibu sana.
Thank you so much. Let me remove this because it's probably hindering my voice from reaching that time. So, my name is Kennedy Miruka, and I was in UNSTA between 2008 to 2012 in Chiromo, and I did computer science. I was a music director for UNSTA and a chairman for ARC Ministry, and I've since then been engaging once in a while, not as frequently as I would love to, and as much as I would really wish to, but I hope I'll be engaging more and more with you. So, for those who don't know me, that's briefly who I am. And ARC Ministry came to my wedding 3 years ago. I think it was 3 years ago in December, and I was really touched with that. And I have been serving as their associate rep in the past 1 year. So I was then approached and asked if I could spare some time to come and talk about, leadership and finances, and just how to manage your talents your money, your time, and all other talents that you have. And I prayed about it, and I eventually said yes amidst the challenges of time that I was having. And so before I even begin, I want to apologize profusely for coming in late. It's such an irony if I'm coming to talk to you about time and I'm the one who has come late. And that's something that I'm sorry about, and I hope you forgive me for that. Today I prepared some presentation for you, but when I sat here, I changed my mind. Instead of going through the presentation, I'll send it to you to go through it yourself. But then I wish to have a discourse with you, and it's going to be a conversation because I know you are all leaders, and God has placed you in various corners and various capacities to serve. And there are things that you know, and there are things that are challenging you. And I have walked the journey myself, and I have learned from some things. I've made a lot of mistakes. And I feel it's also good to share some of those mistakes I've made along the way, so that you're aware of them and will be able to see them when you meet them and overcome them. One of the mistakes I made was, for example, traveling today when I had to come here today. In terms of managing time, that was a mistake. I should have been here yesterday so that I'm here in time. Alright, so having said that, I just wish to request you to just stand a bit for please stretch yourself. Okay. Alright, how many of you have met me before, or seen me, or heard about me anywhere? Alright, very few. Okay. So most of you are strangers to me. Okay. And how many of you are in fourth year? Alright, so we have 3 and third year. Okay, good number. Second year. Right, and first year, none so far. Okay, so thanks so much. I wish to hear your voice, so I don't know what I can do to get to hear your voice before I proceed, so that I'm comfortable. I usually get comfortable when I hear people's voices. Any suggestion? Oh yes, thank you so much. All right, yeah, I'll be glad. So please go ahead and let's share in a song.
Okay, we can sing something like the 21. My Jesus, I love thee. Please sing. My Jesus, I love thee. I know thou art mine. For thee all the
Let us pray. Father Almighty, we give thanks to you for giving us this opportunity to be here together, to learn from one another and to worship you. Father, we invite your presence and your spirit to be amongst us in this session, even as we speak and learn in your feet, O Father. Lord Jesus, bless everyone in this congregation and provide for us your understanding, provide for us your wisdom, and open up our minds and our hearts that we may receive and learn new insights from you. This is our humble prayer, believing and trusting in Jesus' mighty name. Amen. Now that I've heard your voice, I'm more comfortable, and I'm happy to talk to you. I will just start by giving you a very brief history of what I've been through since I left campus 8 years ago. So after leaving campus, I straight away went and worked in a startup company called Copper, which deals with solar energy, and it's a financial credit company which helps people to acquire properties to help them improve their lives while paying pole. So in short, it's kind of a loan that they give you, and you own something and pay slowly. After that, I went to work for an alliance association for Starehe boys and Starehe girls called Old Starehe Society. So I set up the secretariat for that organization, and I started building it in terms of organizational structures, getting different leadership teams together, committees, fundraising, recruitment, and mobilizing people. And after that, I decided to start my own enterprise. Before that, I went to the LSK Circle. So you know Circle, what a Circle is, right? Where you save money, and then you can borrow based on your savings as security. And after that, then I decided I want to start my own enterprise. And that is a technology company which is also a social enterprise called Alumni Pad, to help alumni associations, schools, and individuals who are interested in starting an alumni association, to help churches, to help circles, to help any membership organization to get more organized, to be able to get their treasury, to be able to receive money and record them properly, to help the secretaries to be able to communicate well with members, so engagement and all that. And so right now, that's what I'm doing full-time. I've been doing it for 1.5 years now. So we have a platform that we help organizations to use for that. And I consult for various organizations, big and small, local and international. So that's what I'm doing currently. And if you look at that, it's been a consistent kind of journey, working with groups, working with people that come together for a common good. And that's where I will begin my presentation with. Normally you are one individual. Dealing with yourself is hard enough. Or how many people think it's easy to deal with themselves? Yeah? So dealing with yourself is hard enough. When you are two people, you can imagine how hard that is. Now when you are this number of people, and then when you are the whole church, how big is the church? Yeah? For you won't stand. I'm not saying it. How many members? Do you know? How many? Many. Okay, how many people are in this room? Do you know? Okay.
What is the making food?
Alright, yeah, so first, that's one lesson we begin from, that you have to know your numbers. Yeah? You have to know your numbers if you want to practice good leadership and good stewardship and good management of resources. Okay? And knowing your numbers, start from as simple as knowing how much time you have in a day or in an hour, okay, to do all that you have to do with your life. Okay? How many people have heard of a verse that goes, teach us to number our days? Who can recite it fully? Yes?
Psalms 90 verse 12.
Mm-hmm.
It says, teach us how to number our days that we may gain a heart.
Good. So, wisdom, you gain a heart of wisdom by knowing how to do what? To number your days. You need to know how to number your days. You need to know how to read the signs of time. For those who study prophecy, you need to know when is the right time to do something. So, I will start that as the first point for you. Notice somewhere. Know how to number. So whatever is being numbered, there are so many things you can number. You can number your time, number your days, and number the number of people in church or in the board, or even the number that you yourself have. In other words, the number here means resources. And resources are finite, meaning that they are not endless. Yeah? How many of you have more money than they need? That's all the money you say, this is enough, I don't need any other money in life. Okay, so you realize that it's just definite amount of money that you have. But the things you need to do are much more than the money that you have. How many of you have more time than they need? Alright. Again, you find that as you grow older, time becomes more and more scarce. Yeah? Some people will say, I have enough time to do everything I need to do in a day. Some will say, no, I have to study for tomorrow's class, so I extend my bedtime. You know? I'll extend my waking up time. So you're trying to play around with the resources and just get them to be allocated to what is important to you, so that you can achieve what you need to achieve within the limited resources. Yeah? You do not have all the strength on earth. You just have enough strength maybe to walk you, to carry something, or to do something. But if you want to do something bigger, you probably need a machine, or you need more people to come and join you to do something bigger. Okay? So our resources are many, and everything on earth is a resource for you. The air you breathe is a resource for you. It is not infinite. The air you breathe can end. Okay? The time you have is a resource for you. It is not infinite. It is limited. Yeah? You only have a short duration of time on earth to live. So when you are learning to number our days or your days, you know that you can ask yourself, suppose God has given man 70 years to live, which you don't know. What could you do with that time? But again, you're not sure whether you can live for tomorrow. So you only have when? Today. So what can you do within the time you have, which is right now? Okay? The people here are resources. Yeah? What do you study?
I study education.
Education. What do you study? Engineering. And you?
Education science.
Education science. And yourself? Human resource. So all of you are studying different things. I studied computer science. I don't know much about education. So I can't pretend that I'm a good teacher. Yet there's an expert who is a good teacher. So I don't have all the skills, however much I want them. This year I've just enrolled for law school. So I'll be your colleagues at Parklands. How many are lawyers here? So maybe you will see me in the evenings hovering around Parklands, studying law. Because I don't know law and I want to learn law. Yeah? And I've also enrolled for development practice. It's a master's degree on how you can now bring together resources and all that. So I'm still learning as well, right? Why? Because I don't have the knowledge. The knowledge I have is limited. And I can't have all the knowledge. So I have to make sure that I use other people who have the knowledge and bring them together. So that is the basis. I've spent a lot of time trying to bring you to the speed that, number one, you are not enough. Yeah? You are not enough. You need others to support you as an individual. And the same cascades to the church board. The church board is not enough. Even if it is an apex authority within the church, it still needs the church members. Okay? And if I can give you an analogy, for those who have studied biology, you have created a single cell, yeah? The cell will do what? Will combine with another cell from your mama and your papa, and then they start splitting, yeah? And once they split, they form what? They form things called organelles. You know organelles? Yeah? And then the organelles come together to form organs. Yeah? The organ, like the heart, can't function alone. Where we need pump blood, it needs blood. Okay? And then the liver, and then you have the brain. And all these come together and form the body. Yeah? But all these are coordinated. The cell was coordinated by a nucleus. Yeah? And the organs which have formed an organ system in your body are being coordinated by the brain. Yeah? So there's coordination there as well. And you come into a family, you have a family setup. If the family is functional, it is coordinated. There's some authority in that family. And the family will come together, form a community. Yeah? And the community has leadership and all that. If you can extrapolate it further, you have planets, on Earth, the other planets come together, there's a solar system. They are all going around the sun. And there are other systems in the galaxy. And that's how God created the world, with order, with coordination, with systems. So the second thing that you need to understand is knowing your numbers, then number two, knowing your systems. The system within which you operate. Yeah? If you are in the church, there is a set of guidelines, there's a church manual, there's a set of rules, and they have been developed over time for a purpose, that they may be what? A guidance to you. So if you operate within those parameters, you are able to navigate well and be more productive. Okay? If you are in school where there's a routine, the routine there guides you. So know your system. Yeah? Know your numbers and know your system. Okay? Now the system here will help you to know the limits that you can go. Yeah? Your body system will tell you you are tired, you can't go any further, otherwise you will collapse. Or you are hungry, you need to eat. Yeah? There are financial systems, for example, that will guide you. So you need to know them, and you need to read them and understand them. For who is the treasurer? Anywhere, can be in the church, in the ministry. Do you have a treasurer here? Good. Yeah. So any treasurer will understand that they need to handle money. Yeah. And so I'll just speak this to treasurer, but also to everyone. In handling money, you need to know this private money, your money, and this public money, which is not yours. So there's a lot which you will see on the slides I'll share. So don't mind if I've not projected anything. I need to go through, and then there's my contact there. You can also ask questions. So that's why I decided to use this point in time to have a conversation. Okay. Now, if my brother, whom I love so much, has come to borrow me 100 shillings, and I know my sister here can lend me 200 shillings, and I have 50 shillings. Should I borrow my sister another 50 shillings and then give my brother 100 shillings? Because he's in deep need. Without that 100 shillings, he'll die. So those are the situations you'll get yourselves into, yeah? So I said I just want to share from my experience. One, do not lend people money. Okay? Give if you have,
Exactly.
without expecting back. If you don't have, don't give. How can you give what you don't have? Don't borrow to do what? To lend. Yeah? That now, okay, this is a serious problem. And by the way, with money, there's no emergency. Treasurer, unasikia? There's no emergency. Because you'll always be lending out of emergency. People will never come to borrow from you and say, by the way, I want to borrow from you this money for something I'll be doing next year. They'll be coming to you and saying, I'm in deep trouble right now. Yeah? This is an emergency. I'm stranded in town. I need fare. You know. And you'll be emotional. And you'll want to help that person. Right? And in the process of doing so, you'll give them money that you had not planned for. Did you plan that somebody is going to be stranded in town? Then you give them some money in your budget? No. Did you? So if you planned for it, yes, by all means, please give him that money. If you did not plan for it, you are making a financial or a budgeting mistake by responding to that kind of a need. Am I not being a brother's keeper by behaving like that? So the idea basically is budget for it, okay? Budget for these emergencies. If you know at home, somebody will ask you for money. In your budget, put that in the budget. Just know that these 500 shillings will always be sought other people, my friends, in emergency. Once I've exhausted it, I can't help anybody else. Okay? So put your budget as the first thing. Yeah? That ties to the principle of knowing your numbers. Okay? Yeah. The only two things I came here to tell you: know your numbers and know your systems that you operate within. Yeah? So budgeting is part of knowing your numbers, so that you know that this is the resources that I have, and this is what is at my disposal. If you have money as a church, set aside for the choir to record. Okay? And then there's an evangelistic campaign coming up. What would you do? And they have already gone to the field, the campaign is going on. Yeah? The choir is recording 2 weeks from now. But right now there's a crisis in the campaign. What would you do as the church treasurer? Would you refuse to give that money and say, "Hii ni pesa ya choir, si ya campaign"? Okay, it's not the treasurer's responsibility. It's the church board. So I'm just asking a question in general. Yeah? What did you do?
Really basing my argument on what you have just said is that once I budget and plan, I should go by my budget. I think that is okay to me, so that you avoid some problems.
Yes, so ideally, in finance, I just want to tell you the principle that I've been telling you in another word. Live within your means. So, as an individual, as an organization, as a church, if you look at the church board and you see, as a church, we are only having 2 million in our account. Live within that 2 million. Okay? If you see that you're only having 200,000, live within the 200,000. If your needs go beyond 200,000, look for the money that is beyond 200,000. Okay? So living within your means is what makes you not borrow people. Because if you go beyond your means, it means you'll be forced to borrow. Where else will you get money from? if you're not earning it. Okay? So you'll be forced to borrow. Now, to lend other people is to assist other people to live beyond their means. And it also has an impact on you. It also has an impact on you in that it makes you live beyond your means. Okay? Because now you're forced to borrow to cover what you paid, you lend somebody. Yeah? And you, again, the other thing, don't mix emotions with resources. Okay? Yeah? Don't lend somebody money and then be emotional about it. Money is money. It's here now, it's nowhere again tomorrow. Don't lend somebody your time and then be emotional about it. So you plan. So delink your emotions from these resources, because you came on earth, you found the resources here for your use. Okay? You use them as they have been provided to you. Some have more resources than others. And for you to be able to achieve bigger things than yourself, you have to bring others on board. So if you want to live beyond your means, you do what? You come together. So you say, wewe changa hii tufanye hiki tukue kubwa. That way, you will collectively be living within a bigger means than each of you individually. Okay? So I'll end there because of time. I know my colleague wants to come on board right now. And I'll ask if there are questions or comments. And just to, before we go there, I'll just check on my presentation. Okay, so there's 3 presentations. The first presentation is on time management. The second one is on leadership. And the third one is on financial management of your own resources and for the church. It covers how do you get money? How do you manage loans? Yeah? Yes, don't lend, don't borrow. But when you have to, there's investment, yeah? So there's a bit of investment. Yeah? So when you want to build a house and you don't have enough money, you want the house now, not tomorrow. And you're forced to borrow because this house will pay back itself tomorrow. Anything called investment is a risk. Because you're not sure whether the return will be back. So those are the 3 presentations. And on time, it's a scarce commodity. You cannot buy it, you cannot save time, and you cannot store time. Yeah? You can't say that I want to save 2 hours today so that I can use those 2 hours tomorrow. Once today is gone, it has gone, you get 2 hours. Okay? And it's impossible to increase time. You can't increase it. Yeah? And the passage of time is constant and irrevocable, and time is basically like it's a cycle thing. Everybody comes and goes. Okay? So don't let these things called resources manage you. Money, time, whatever resource you have, you manage them. Okay? Yeah. So don't say that now I just sit when it is time for lunch. People are going for lunch, I go for lunch. You have to plan yourself and be very deliberate. Don't say, I have 10 bob, now I can buy mandazi. No, that 10 bob should be planned for. So if you find yourself you have money that you have not planned for, then you don't deserve that money. Okay? Quickly throw it away into some savings somewhere. Don't stay with it. Then once you are ready to use the money, get it from the savings, yeah? So there's that, and then there are things called time thieves, things that steal your time, like procrastination, okay, lack of priorities, yeah, and all that. So you'll have all those in the presentation, and So this time I just want to open it out for you guys and hear some of the challenges, particularly you have and questions, and try and address them quickly. I don't know how many minutes you're adding or removing from me. 10 minutes. Okay. So let's address the issues you face in life and in campus and in church. Let's address them. Yeah? Yeah.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
The question is that I'm supposed to plan for my finances that I'm supposed to be getting. But what if my source of finances are uncertain? What should I do?
Okay, that's my situation right now. Yeah, my work, I don't get every month. You go and receive a salary somewhere, it's business. So when you sell some service, you get money. If you don't sell it, you don't get money. And some people, you give the service and they don't pay you, they promise you. And then you do what? You follow up, you have to collect the money. So how do you live? You have school fees to pay, you have children to feed, you have all these things to do, and you're not sure when your next pay is coming. How many are in such a situation? When you guys help comes and you go sour. Almost every student. Yeah? So how do you handle such a situation? So this is what I do myself. Different people handle it differently. So for myself, I try to make sure that I have a regular income out of my irregular situation. Yeah? And the way I'm doing it right now is, my platform, you pay for it monthly, so it's a monthly subscription. So I know, okay, once I get this client, I'll have some monthly subscription, even if it is 1,000 per month. That helps me to plan myself and budget myself, because I know my numbers. Every month there's a 1,000 shilling that I expect. Okay? So try to create some regularity in your irregular situation. If you are people who are entrepreneurs, sometimes you need to have a job that gives you regular income as you build your business. Yeah? Because that then supports you until the business reaches a point where it can support itself. Okay? So try to have regularity within your irregular situation. Number 2, as long as the money is not with you, it is not there. Okay? So don't say, I'm expecting some money to come, even if you've been promised and you're absolutely sure that it will come. Don't budget on that money until it is in your pocket, in your account. Okay? So that helps you in case whoever promised you does not deliver on their promise. Not that they are untrustworthy, but things happen. Maybe they had also been promised, and their promise didn't come in time. Okay? So imagine if you relied. Do you guys pay rent, or do you just live in the hostel all of you? You pay rent. Some of you pay rent for the hostel. Okay, yeah. So once you're out of campus, the situation changes a bit, because there are regular bills you have to pay: monthly internet, monthly rent, monthly electricity, monthly water. If it is school fees. So they are so regular, and at the beginning of every month, everybody wants their money from you. Yeah. So how I've addressed myself is this: I sit down and say, in a month, how much do I spend? What is my operational cost? So if I was the church board, I would say, as a church board, how much do we spend regularly every month? That this is the amount that we know is our operating cost. So if I know that every month I need 10,000 to survive, yeah, then whatever extra that comes out of that beyond the 10,000, I don't spend it. I save it. Because I can survive on 10,000, and that is a given. So if I know that at least as long as I'm getting this 10,000, the rest of the things are God's blessings, I save it. And I save it towards a goal. So I don't just save that in a savings too, which is also good. If you have no goals, save that money until the time that it's now clear in your head what you want to do with it. Yeah. Once it is sizable enough that now I can purchase a fridge, I get that money, I go purchase the fridge. Yeah, because I can't afford the fridge from my normal incomes I send towards it, or a television, or a house, or whatever it is I want to purchase. So that's how I handle it. I don't know if somebody has a better idea, you can share. Okay, I don't know if it makes sense. Yeah. So try and get some regularity around your income from a irregular situation, but don't budget what you don't have. Yeah. All right. Any other question or challenges you've experienced so far in your ministry, in your personal life, with regards to managing the resources at your disposal? Let me start with her, then you.
Sometimes money is still up, but saving the money until it's this amount to do something, or the small money you have, you invest it to attain the goal that you have. So it is important.
You're right. Yeah. So the better thing, of course, is investment, and as I mentioned, investment is a risk. Yeah. So money that has been put somewhere that's lying idle is not useful to you. But money that is working for you and generating something is useful to you. Yeah. That's why when the 3 servants were given talents, okay, the one that didn't invest theirs, they said, mimi nimepewa tu moja, this guy is stingy and stuff like that. That one was taken from him. So even the little that you have, you use it because you're not doing anything useful with it. But the ones who invested, they doubled and they became more endowed with more resources. Yeah. So investment is a risk. If this guy buried the thing and kept it lying down there, it wouldn't have increased. When they traded, they took a risk and the money increased. So the wiser decision is to invest. But remember, when you're investing, you are taking a risk. There are investments that are kind of minimal, almost zero risk, like government bonds. Yeah. So if you have money that, or you can do a thing to do, but if you have no idea where to invest and what to do, please keep it safe. Don't squander it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so sometimes planning and budgeting when it comes to, I don't know whether it's for to only students, but sometimes can get out of hands. For example, a student is planning to have tea and mandazi as breakfast, which costs as low as 20 bob. Then you go there is no mandazi or there is no
tea.
What you find there is ugali, and you budget for 20 bob, but you have the 100. But you have the 100 and you have to eat. So you eat the ugali. So you have spent 80 bob where you planned for 20. And let me also ask about time. Sometimes time can get out of hands. You plan for some things for today, and then you find things change. A lecture has been changed, a class has been changed. There is a card and then a class. You see? How do you go about that?
Yeah, so still know your numbers, and that's still about budgeting and accounting. If you know that every day I'm supposed to spend 20 shillings, then one day, for unavoidable reasons, you spend 50. Know that it will have an impact tomorrow. So you have to recover that additional 30 shillings. So you have to then adjust yourself and say, for the next 3 days, I'll spend 10 shillings instead of the normal 20. So I'll only eat mandazi and not mandazi and tea. By the 5th day, you'll have done what? Recovered. And now you're able to resume your normal mandazi and tea. Yeah? So know that when such shocks come, there's always an impact that you can pay for. Okay? Even time-wise, the same thing applies. If you had planned to complete your assignment today, then for some unavoidable reason, something happened and you're not able to, they know that since you always sleep at 11, today, itabidi ulale 11:30 to try and recover. Those adjustments are there, and I'll add that in the presentation actually, how you can plan for uncertainties and budget for uncertainties in terms of money and time. Yeah? So the uncertainties are there. But at the end of the day, know that any shock will have an impact on your normal system of operations. Even the earth sometimes is an earthquake. It's not because the earth was created to be always, dancing and quaking. Something happened. And it erupted somewhere in the mountain and the sea somewhere, and then the earth has to adjust itself. Sometimes it causes destruction, it kills people. And so you should be ready to bear those kind of consequences. Yeah. So don't say that, okay, I have 100K, I really wanted to buy that motorbike. Then you buy the motorbike, and then now you have to eat leaves for the rest of the month. Yeah. So when planning, know that when you do something out of the ordinary, you have to make adjustments. They might not be the most pleasurable adjustments. So you ready yourself for that. Okay. Yeah, so that's there. And you should be able to know how to plan for uncertainties. How to keep your kitty for uncertain times of money. How to have an endowment. An endowment is money and this is something I'll encourage each one and every one of you individually, and even the church. So the church, I don't know if you already have an endowment, do you? You do, yeah? Yeah, so the endowment is something that's good. You have money, and you say, this money, I'll just put it here, and I'll only use whatever profits come from it. I will not use that money. I'll only hand it over to my children and my children's children. So that when you are old, your children don't start from scratch the way you started from scratch. Yeah? And yourself, when you no longer have income actively coming in, the endowment is you're able to live off it. Okay? You still have income. How many would love such a situation? Yeah? And what that does to you, it releases you from working for money to now serving God. You have now the peace of mind to serve God because you're not worried about money. It is a difficult journey. One journey that you guys will encounter immediately you complete campuses. Paying your health. It's a loan, yeah? So as you consume the help, know that you have to pay for it. But the time you're going to pay for it, here they have something in BBI saying that they'll give you a break for 4 years. Maybe you'll be lucky. But by the time you start paying for that help, you'll also be paying for rent. You'll also be paying for many other things you're currently not paying for. And if you don't have a good job, life will be so difficult for you. So remember, even as you have help, try and do something useful with it. Don't squander it, because it's a loan and you have to pay it. Yeah? And if you don't pay it, they list you in something called the Credit Reference Bureau, CRB. Okay? When your credit is dented, it means you can't borrow anybody money. They won't trust you. You go to the bank and tell them, I have this great idea. All I need is just capital. and nitakuwa nimeomoka, but the bank will tell you sorry, you're blacklisted. Yeah, because you've not been paying your debts, and that debt is up, or even your friends and all that. Okay, so remember, you don't own it, use it wisely, budget for the things that you have. The two principles, they are wider if I expound on them. Know your numbers and know the systems, how to navigate through that. Okay? Yeah. And by the way, I need you to tell me when to stop. Okay? Don't allow me to beat the time too much. I know I've already eaten you to 10, so that's why I'm asking you to do me the favor. Yeah? Is there any more questions? Okay. I'm not seeing any additional questions, or if there's one, please just say it now. Use this opportunity. Don't regret. Why didn't I ask that? Or why didn't I say that? And I had the opportunity. Okay. Comments? No questions. Comments? Alright, so challenge to each one of you. I want to challenge each one of you to think of an endowment for yourself as an individual. Financial endowment, yeah. In other words, find some asset or property that can be generating money for you into perpetuity. Okay? And I want to challenge each one of you to come up with one for yourself individually. For the church or for each of the ministries, I want to challenge you for that. That's my challenge. Number one. So in case I get an opportunity to be with you, again, I'm asking whether you live up to that. Then the final challenge that I want to leave you with is, as a church, in 2021, see if you can neither a lender be nor a borrower be. In simpler terms, can you live within your means as a church, as ministries, and all that? Living within your means does not mean that you only work, you set your goal. Start with us here and have this conversation about for the little pieces of information and nuggets we have gathered, the thoughts that have been